gratitude.
Thank you for joining Chats Along the Path
Cleaning.
with discussions about the 7
Nature.
transformative practices of the 7-Way
Walking.
Path. I'm Christian of Standing Stones
Journaling.
Healing, inviting you to heal,
Ritual.
grow, and transform with the 7-Way Path. Thank you for walking the path, and best wishes for your
Cleaning.
journey.
Nature.
Welcome to Chats Along the Path. Such an honor to have you here, and such an honor to have Jenny Luddington with us. Jenny Luddington was diagnosed with epilepsy at age 17, which presented her with educational barriers that she overcame to develop a love for creative writing and poetry. She has mentored and guided youth in various work positions, focusing on arts, personal development, jobs, and education. She currently serves as a community organizer for a local wildlife charity and facilitates women's groups, including the Kent Goddess Group and Folkestone and Dover Red Tent. She is passionate about helping people transform their lives through developing creative practices and is here to talk to us about journaling. Jenny, welcome to Chats Along the Path. So honored to have you here. Thank you.
It's lovely to be here and to connect with you again.
Well, thank you so much, Jenny. Jenny, please do tell us about how you got into journaling.
Well, I think I got into journaling via poetry. So when I was very young, I would write a lot of poetry. I had loads of little notebooks and I would annotate the text with a drawing around my thumb and writing, little odes to my nan's Dalmatian dog. And I remember I was about 6 or 7 years old when I got my first thesaurus, and it really gave me a love for language. And I did very well at school academically. And then I went on to do performing arts and English and science at our sixth form college. But that coincided was when I developed epilepsy. So I kind of dropped out of college. I became a mum quite young. I got married and my life seemed to go on a completely different trajectory. And I was quite busy being a mum, as you can imagine. And I kind of let that creative side kind of die down a little bit. And when my son was about 5, I went off and I did a degree in English literature. And I was studying all these really great poets. And then I thought, well, who am I to think that I can be creative? Who am I to think I'm as good as these old white dead dudes? So my creativity kind of really just dropped off. And at the same time, I was beginning to experience some challenges with my mental health. And I had some very good friends online, and this is going to show my age a little bit, but back in the day, there used to be something called Live Journal. And it was like an online journaling thing, and you could either have it public or you could have it completely private, or you could have it open to a select number of friends. And I had a friendship group online that were people that I really admired and really loved, but weren't my closest circle of friends. So in there, I used to write what I used to call my whaley blogs. And it was being very honest and open about my struggles. And it was the feedback that I got from a very special group of women that helped me to realise there was a cyclical nature to my depression. So it would always come up in the autumn. And because I had this blank space where I could express myself, these friends were able to point out and say, Jenny, do you realise that this is happening every September, October time? And I hadn't realised. And I went, no, you're absolutely right. It is cyclical. And they encouraged me to reach out and to get some help. And some of that help was medication, some of that help was talking therapies. But I genuinely believe if it hadn't have been for that live journal, I might not be here today. but it was sharing how I was feeling and accessing support that helped me. And then that started my process of journaling.
Wow, Jenny, that is so powerful. And, there's a lot of beauty in that too. This idea of coming together with a group and sharing your innermost thoughts in this kind of way, and how incredibly powerful that they were able to help you through this process by saying, "Hey, Jenny, look, there's a pattern to your feelings." And so this, it really has been, in a sense, very transformative for you in that kind of way. And I also love, Jenny, that it sounds to me like you have had a lifelong love of words. When you were talking about drawing in the book, and then you were like, "Oh, and I was 6," I'm thinking, whoa, wow, that is really lovely as well, Jenny. So thank you so much for sharing this. So, Jenny, we know how you got into journaling. Where did your practice go from there? Where did it go from that live journal experience?
Well, I did a lot of reading around journaling, and I know a lot of listeners will know about morning pages and all the sort of different techniques that you can do. So I think I started looking for books that would give me different tips and ways of using pen and paper, because although I'd started writing a live journal on the computer, there's a lot of research that suggests handwriting activates different areas of our brains, and it's a different experience. And after a couple of years of reading, a friend encouraged me to go on and do Heal Your Life teacher training, which is based on the philosophy of Louise Hayes. And a lot of that involves identifying limiting beliefs and working around rewriting those things as positive affirmations. And that was, I think, when I really connected to sort of a daily journaling practice. And that can look different for me at different points in my life. So at the moment, my journaling practice is in the morning. I do some spiritual reading, and I will find one quote in that morning reading slot, and I will journal on that. And then in the evening, I work on gratitudes. So I'm in a little community in Folkestone that has a little online group that just shares 3 gratitudes every day. And I think there's also something in that practice, which we just touched on, about witnessing. So any of these practices you can do as a solo endeavour, and they will work brilliantly. But if you write and then you share that writing, and you're heard and you're witnessed, nobody's leaping in to give you advice, but just witnessing the words you say or the gratitude that you're feeling, I think is incredibly powerful. And there's a more recent practice that I took on when we first went into lockdown, and that is to write a daily haiku. And I think I've probably written about 900 now since the whole pandemic happened. And what inspired me to do that was I was working in an FE college at the time, and we knew we were going to be closing down. So the catering department cooked up every scrap of food that we had in the kitchens, and we boxed that up and we gave that out to the most vulnerable students, because we didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember feeling a real sense of profound loss and not knowing when we would meet again, but knowing that we would meet again. And obviously, living in Kent in the UK, living in near Dover, we've got Vera Lynn, who's saying, we'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when. And that was just playing in my mind, and that formed the basis of the very first haiku that I wrote, about meeting again and not knowing when it would happen, but having confidence in my heart. And all the time for about a year, I called these haikus isolation haikus. And after about a year of this, I thought, what kind of message am I putting out to the universe? that were isolated. So I then changed the name of these to reintegration haikus. And I'm not saying that was the reason that we started coming out of lockdown, but I certainly don't think it hurt.
That's great, Jenny. I love it. And I love how mindful you were of the words to say, wait a minute, let's change the title of these. Wow, Jenny. So, in all of that, there's so many different practices. And it sounds to me like your journaling practice is so very varied. Like you do so many different things and don't have one set way of journaling, but rather do all of these different things, which makes me wonder, Jenny, do you have a favorite?
Don't. I mean, no, do I? Don't I? I'm really liking haikus because I've kept that over, 2 and a bit years now. But I actually like novelty and I like change. So I think I'm a bit of a sucker for a 30-day challenge because I think anyone can do anything for 30 days, not a big commitment. And then you can see if it sticks in your practice and you enjoy it and it's something that you want to carry on doing or not. So quite recently, I did a practice with Molly Reamer, who does 30 Days of Goddess. And that is developing your own small everyday magical practice. So it might be as simple as lighting a candle and looking out of your window and just being still for 2 minutes, seeing what you see, seeing the everyday magic around you. And then there were some more journaling prompts and little videos that you could follow. And she does do an absolutely free version online that you can join into if you want to give it a try. And I really, really enjoyed that because you can print out little daily prompt cards. And then I would pick a card each morning. And then I would see how that word would show up for me in the day. And I don't know if it's biased because it's on your mind, you see it everywhere, but it always did seem to show up some remarkable way during my day. And whether it's bias, whether it's coincidence, whether it is the universe talking to you, do you know what? I don't really think that it matters. It's just being present.
Yes, and it sounds like fun too, Jenny. That's lovely. So, Jenny, I'd love to dive a little more deeply into some of these practices, particularly you mentioned morning pages. And for those who are listening who don't know what morning pages are and who haven't heard of this, can you talk a little bit about morning pages?
Right, so morning pages. Oh, can you remind me of the name of the lady that does them?
Julia Cameron.
That's the one. Had completely gone. So Julia Cameron, absolutely amazing lady. Her books are really wonderful, really, really accessible. But the kind of takeaway about morning pages, it's just committing to get up in the morning and write 3 pages. And it's completely stream of consciousness writing. You don't need to overthink things. In fact, she suggests in the early stages of that practice that you don't actually reread what you've written. And it's the idea that, we all have our judge, our inner critic, and that usually kicks in quite quickly in the day. And usually it's because the first thing we've done in the morning is to pick up our phone and start scrolling through and looking at all the doom and gloom in the world. But you can kind of bypass this if the first thing that you do when you get up in the morning is grab your pen and grab your journal and just write. And honestly, it doesn't matter what you write. It's kind of the practice, it's the showing up every day, it's doing it when you feel like you've got a lot to say and doing it when you don't feel like you've got to say, when you're in that kind of empty space. And you can just be you, your pen, your candle, if that's how you start that practice. And after a while, even if you sat there going, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, and literally filling a page with that, eventually something will come in. And I like the way that Julia used to say about if you have got a problem or something's worrying, to connect with your little self, your higher being and say, what would I do in this situation? And when you come to the page with a problem and you make space to listen to your own higher guidance, it is amazing the responses that you get.
Beautiful, Jenny. Thank you for that. So, Jenny, talk to us a little bit more about some of those other practices you mentioned, the journaling on gratitude, the evening journaling, any of those other practices, tips that you might like to share. You also mentioned Louise Hay. Whatever you feel called to dive into a little more deeply on these practices.
Well, I think gratitude journaling is such an easy way to get into a daily habit. I think a lot of us feel that we have to be writers to think that we can keep a journal, or that we're worried if we put our thoughts on a page that somebody else might find it and read it. I know that's a very real fear of a lot of people that come to groups with me. But gratitude is literally just a couple of things a day that you're grateful for. And I think the benefit in doing that as a group practice is that if you have had a really rubbish day and you're really struggling to find anything to be grateful for, if you can read somebody's list, you can either be grateful that they're grateful for things, or you can see something and think, do you know what, I've never thought to be grateful for that. I remember one day one of the girls put orange squash. She was just grateful for orange squash. And I love orange squash. I've never thought to be grateful for it. And we were talking about Louise Hay. When I went over and did my training, a funny thing happened to me. We'd had like the first day's training, and I'd gone to have a shower in the evening, and they were talking about giving gratitude for, like your appliances. So I'm sitting there, I'm saying I'm grateful for a nice hotel room. I'm grateful for a hot shower after a long day. And somehow the shower attachment fell off and hit me on the back of my head. And I was fine. I managed to get myself dressed, go down to the concierge and sort of say, it was the whole thing that had fallen off the wall. And they said, we'd just like to call the ambulance out to you just to give you a check over. And I said, that's fine. I said, I think I'm absolutely fine. And anyway, these two paramedics came in and they said to me, oh, are you here on the course? And I said, yes. And they said, what's it about? And I said, it's about healing my life. And they went, and you've been hit by a shower? And I went, yeah. I said, obviously didn't give quite enough gratitude to the shower as I could have, maybe.
Jenny, that's a great story. I love it. And it's just so funny. I mean, who would have thought you saying thank you to the shower and it falls in on you? Thank you for sharing that lovely story with us, and glad that you are okay. Yes. Wonderful, Jenny. Thank you. And so, Jenny, I also heard you mention, I just want to say, I also heard you mention about reading a little bit in the morning as well. And do you incorporate this into your journaling practice at all?
Yes, I do. So thank you. One of the things that I started doing for this year, as you know, I set myself 22 goals at the beginning of the year, and that goes up. So like in 2018 it was 18 goals, and 2022 22 goals, and one of those was to read 22 minutes a day every day for 2022. And I thought, yeah, that's doable. And I think a lot of the things with goal settings is it should never be a stick with which to beat yourself with. So if a day I don't read for 22 minutes, that's fine. I'll just try and show up for the practice the next day. None of these things are meant to not make your life better. They're all to improve your life. So I read whatever book I'm reading, and quite often they are either books on personal development, self-help, divine goddess, spirituality, and I sit there and I read, and sometimes it might be a book that has an exercise, so I might spend my journaling time doing that exercise, and sometimes it might be that it's just a quote that really moves me. So I think today I read a quote from Journey to Your Dark Goddess by Jane Meredith, And it's not going to be verbatim, but it was basically about, if something is too hard, that maybe that opportunity isn't the right opportunity for you. And recently I've experienced some issues getting back into education, and it has felt incredibly hard to do. And I think it would have been quite easy to think, oh my God, I'm a complete failure. I spent all this money doing a course and I'm dropping out and I'm not going to do it. And again, there's that handy stick to beat yourself with. And actually, I'm coming to it now because of this quote that I've read at this time when I'm experiencing this issue. I thought, actually, do you know what? Maybe that opportunity isn't for me. And that's okay. We can open doors. And if there's a bit of resistance, we can think maybe that door isn't for me, or we can push through. And it's about being honest with yourself and what you want in that moment. And I think journaling on reading can become some form of bibliomancy, which is a way of choosing based on using books. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of, during the witchcraft trials, they would weigh people up against books, and some churches, to save women, cottoned on to this idea, and you had Bibles the size of a small car because the women would be lighter. But it's that idea that whatever your spiritual beliefs are, if you have yourself open as a channel, the right messages will meet you at the right time. And I find a lot of comfort in that.
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful, Jenny. The right messages will meet you at the right time. How lovely. And I love that you are journaling on the things that you are reading as well, and really even further combining your love of reading and words with your creative practices and exploration. So thanks for that, Jenny, very much. So Jenny, what tips might you have for someone, like let's say someone is listening and they're saying, wow, this is all really great, but it sounds like it might take a lot of time and I just don't have time. Or someone is listening and saying, wow, this is really great, Jenny, how do I get started? What tips or advice, suggestions, recommendations do you have?
Well, I think the first one, and this goes back to morning pages, because I've done it with quite a few people over the years. And if you read the book, the suggestion is that you write 3 pages of an A4 legal pad. If that is too much for you, don't do it. Find the smallest notebook that you can do and write 3 pages in that, because I think showing up to a practice has got to be achievable and accessible to you. And if your lifestyle at the moment is really busy, you might not be able to spend 30 minutes a day journaling, but could you spend 3? Could you wake up and just scribble a little something every day for 30 days? So I think, again, that ties into why I like a 30-day challenge. I'm a bit of a flibbity gibbet, so my concentration jumps around from shiny thing to shiny thing, bit of a magpie. So I think, actually, does that opportunity appeal to me? So be it reading for 30 days, be it walking with a goddess for 30 days, whatever it is, does it appeal to me? And if it does, can I make a promise to myself to show up and do it for 30 days? And can I be gentle with myself, so that if I miss a day, if I skip a day, can I not get into that cycle of berating myself for failing? Because we're all going to fail at all things lots of times, because we're human and we're fallible. But can I promise to do this practice? And can I promise to be gentle with myself if I don't? And if I can say yes to those, that's where I start. It starts with that idea. It starts with that commitment. So again, if you can make sure that whatever you're trying to change in your life can be anchored to something that you already do every day. So I know with a lot of things, when I was starting writing affirmations, what I would do is I would work on a belief that I wanted to change, and I would write it down and I would put it on the mirror, and I would repeat those affirmations every time I was brushing my teeth. So I brush my teeth every day. I know at least twice a day I was going to spend some time writing those affirmations. And then I think you can build on success. So if you're doing it twice a day, well, could you do it every time that you looked in a mirror? When you go to the bathroom, when you wash your hands. And I think that's what started with me, was being able to look at myself in the mirror. So Louise Hay has written extensively on mirror work, and mirror work is really just affirmations that you say to yourself in front of a mirror. And prior to doing my Heal Your Life training, I had very few photographs of myself, because I felt very uncomfortable looking at myself in a mirror or having photos taken of me. But over years of practice, looking at a mirror and making that commitment every time to just smile at myself, give myself a cheeky little wink and say, hello, gorgeous, has made it much easier to connect with myself on that soul level, to enjoy the physicality of my body. If you had told me a few years ago that I would be podcasting and being on vlogs and talking in front of people, I would have said, you're absolutely mad. You'll find that as I talk in this interview, there will be times when I pause and aha, because I have neurological differences. So I have epilepsy and I have a condition called functional neurological disorder. And the perception that I would put on the world would be that people would think I was rubbish when I spoke. People would be judging me. And you know what? Nobody does. Nobody ever cares if you pause in the middle of the sentence or forget a word or ask, what's the name of that author? People are kind and caring, and they want to hear you speak. They want to hear you share. And whether you do that in a room full of people and you're sharing some creative writing, or you've rocked on up to an open mic night to share some poetry and you can't remember it all, so you're just reading it off your phone, nobody else cares. It's only you that worries about how you project yourself to the world. The rest of the world just wants to hear what you have to say.
Oh, beautiful, Jenny. I love that. That is great encouragement, and I definitely agree. You know, I for my part as a speaker, I'm an ummer. So I'll and you know, you just keep going. Oh, that's beautiful, Jenny. Thank you so much for that great encouragement. And yes, for sure, you know, we all have beautiful, unique voices that need and deserve to be heard. So I just want to chime in and second that, Jenny. So thank you so much for that. So, Jenny, you know, you are very knowledgeable about journaling. You have taught workshops and instructed people. You've done all different kinds of journaling. I have a few more questions for you, Jenny. I'm curious to know about the benefits that you have seen personally or even in others from journaling. Now, we know, of course, you had that great benefit with your live journal experience, but what other benefits, if any, have you seen?
Do you know what? I think the biggest benefit to journaling, particularly when you share your journals with other people, is it is the best armor in the world against imposter syndrome, because you all realize that we're all thinking that we're not good enough. We're all struggling with feelings of inadequacy, and we live in a society where we're taught that it's not okay to be vulnerable, and it absolutely is. You know, if you can only show up to a page and a piece of paper and do that, that is an amazing place to start. It might be that you don't need to share it with the wider world, but sharing it with someone, even if it's your own implied reader, is a brilliant place to start. And I think that when we are struggling with negative thoughts, with intruding thoughts, they just play in our head on an endless loop. But when you stop and you put that down on paper, if you can then come back to the page with a compassionate eye, with a gently curious and questioning eye, and say, well, actually, is that true? You know, does anybody care if I or ah for a presentation? Has anybody ever said that what I have to say isn't valuable? And when it's in our heads, I don't think we have the capacity to question it. When it's written down on the page and we slow down and we take a breath and we look at that person like it was a small child or it was a friend that we care desperately about, and we heard them speaking really negatively about themselves, we'd probably always be the first one to step in and say, actually, that's not true. So if we can show that compassion to ourselves, like we would to a friend or a small child, it just opens that door to a more passionate, kinder way of connecting with ourselves.
Beautiful, Jenny. I love that. I mean, wow, what greater thing can we get from journaling than increased levels of compassion, right? Beautiful. Thank you. So, Jenny, you do have a lot of journaling knowledge, experience. What questions am I not asking? So, what else should we be saying, Jenny?
Oh, that's such a great question. I think you've asked a lot of the questions that I would say. I think maybe that idea about not being good enough. And you don't necessarily need to be a technically great writer. Although I will add the caveat that the more you write and the more you read, I think you will get better at expressing yourself. But I've done workshops with young people who are functionally illiterate. So what we've done is we've taken newspaper articles and we've just picked out words that they can read, and we've blacked out the bits, and they create found poetry from something that somebody else has created. I think using prompts, using cards, using quotes can be such a good way in, because there's nothing quite as terrifying as a blank page. So if you want to write something down that you've read somewhere else, I think it's anything that will inspire you to dive deeper. And, go to classes. Even if you haven't got much money, find out what is going on for free in your local community. So go down to your libraries, go down to your open mic poetry nights, dip your toe in the water. Don't be scared to have a go, and try not to compare yourself to others, because it's your unique point of view which will be of interest to other people. There's some great writing out there, but we're not necessarily needing another Shakespeare. We've already got one. And if you actually want to read Shakespeare and then think about one of the characters' monologues, and how would you act differently if you were in Hamlet's position? How would you feel about being Ophelia and giving out flowers at court? You can always put yourself in these people's shoes and see how you've experienced it. I think there's something quite magical about being inspired by other people. Another thing that you can do is National Poetry Writing Month. That was what got me back into writing poetry. So that happens every April, completely free, happens around the world. And again, you are given a daily prompt It might be on a theme, it might be on a genre of poetry writing, and then you can find little pockets of groups all over Facebook, all over the world, where people get together and they share what they've written. And some of those groups will give feedback on your poetry, and other groups, it's purely for sharing and saying what you enjoyed. So I think communities of writers can be a fantastic way of getting in. Journaling on your own can be fantastic. It can totally be a solo effort if you're not into groups. But it's about exploring what is local to you. And local's changed, because obviously it would have been just what was in your area. But I know that, Christian, you and I connected over Facebook, and we've been on each other's podcasts. And there is no other way that I would have met you in this lifetime, because we're completely different sides of the pond.
Yes, and it's been great to know you, meet you, and interact with you, Jenny, and to be your friend. So I want to say thank you so much for that. You know, Jenny, as you were talking, I remembered that in my own journal, I was looking back at a journal a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, and I had written about Jenny says to do this thing called scripting. So, Jenny, do you remember talking about scripting, and can you share that practice with listeners?
Absolutely. Now, I want to say scripting is a Louise Hay technique. If I'm wrong, I do apologise, but I like to think it is. And basically, scripting is about imagining a situation and writing about it as if it's already occurred. So I will give you an example about that. My friend Hazel, who is my co-host on my podcast, had about 7 years ago put our names down for a beach hut in Folkestone, because we live by the sea. And I was using that as an example. Now, we knew that there were going to be some movement on the beach huts becoming available, because it had been in the news, so it was back in my mind. But I literally wrote, I am down at the beach hut. I have got a box of dog treats, and I'm feeding puppies when they come up to see me. I'm drinking an oat milk latte, and I am watching the seagulls. And I kid you not, 3 hours later, Hazel rings me up and says, we can pick up the keys next Tuesday. So if you are somebody who doesn't believe in the power of laws of attraction and stuff like that, that's fine. But for me, I knew it was coming. I did know it was coming, but the writing and it coming, did it make it happen any quicker? I don't know. So I think it's a really good technique for if you're going for a job interview. Do your script about how you're going to perform at your job interview, and at the end of it, you say, picture how magnanimously you're going to respond to being told that you've got your job. If you're selling a house, exactly the same. I had somebody who was having difficulties selling her house. So I said we were doing some vision boarding at that point. Oh, excuse me, I just got to cough. And I said to her, take a photo of yourself with somebody else's sold sign, and then put that in the centre of your vision board. And she did that. And again, 3 days later, she got the call that an offer had been made on the house. And, I know that the law of attraction stuff can be a bit woo to people, but I 110% believe in it. And I don't believe that it is replaces taking action. I think it happens as a visual reminder to take action yourself. So you do all of the things, you engaged an estate agent, and you're doing that, but you're just giving the universe that little extra nudge, saying, I am ready to receive whatever the thing is that you're scripting about.
Oh, lovely, Jenny. Thank you for sharing that practice with us. That is a lot of fun. So thank you so very much. And I'm glad that I remembered about that. Gosh, this must have been a year ago that you mentioned this, and I just happened to read it in an old journal just last week or so, and it just now popped into my mind, remembering it. So I'm glad to ask you about that and to hear about this practice and share it with listeners. So thank you, Jenny. And Jenny, thank you so much. This has just been a lovely, lovely chat. Jenny, is there anything else that you would like to add? And where can listeners get a hold of you if they would like to reach out to hear more about journaling?
Absolutely. So I have a little Facebook group. It's called All Heart Led. So if you just pop onto All Heart Led, you'll find me. You can connect with me there. If you are more interested in goddess spirituality, you can check me at Kate Goddess Group.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And those links are below so people can go there straight away. Jenny, any final thoughts on journaling for us?
I think just don't be scared to have a go. Read about it. If you just put into Google journaling, there will be 101 different ways that you can do. If you try one and you don't like it, that's fine. Try the next one. I honestly believe that there is a journaling technique that works for everyone.
Beautiful. Thank you. Jenny, thank you so much for chatting with us along the path. It has been such an honor to speak with you and learn more about journaling. So thank you for sharing all of your great information and inspiration with listeners.
Thank you very much for having me, Christian.
Thank you, and thank you all for listening. We appreciate you tuning in and chatting along the path with us. Thank you so much, and blessings. Gratitude. Thanks for tuning in to this chat along the path. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for walking the path. Blessings and best wishes for your journey. Journaling, ritual, silence.